The terrifying thing about complete clarity is how quiet it is. When you discover that your entire life is an elaborate stage play, your heart doesn't always race. Sometimes it slows down to a steady, freezing pulse. I was sitting in my car on the interstate overpass, watching windshield wipers struggle against a torrential downpour when the illusion of my 6-year marriage ended. My name is Chloe Vance. I am 27 years old. I am an interior architect, a profession that requires me to study structures, lines, and foundations. I spent years looking at blueprints, yet I failed to notice that the foundation of my own home was entirely hollow. I had called my husband Logan to let him know the severe weather had delayed my client meeting, and I would be returning home early. He answered on the 4th ring. His voice carried that familiar, sharp edge of irritation. It was the tone he always used when he wanted me to feel like an uninvited guest in his schedule. He said he was swamped with back-to-back consulting calls, told me we would speak in the evening, and hung up, except he didn't. My car's dashboard screen remained lit. The call timer was still ticking. 3 seconds of muffled fabric noise passed through the speakers, followed by the distinct sound of a glass door closing. When Logan spoke again, his voice was completely unrecognizable. The impatience was gone. It was replaced by a loose, warm, almost breathless laugh. He said, "Good God, she is suffocating when she gets anxious. I honestly don't know how I've kept a straight face for this long." Then came a second voice, a soft, familiar laugh that felt like a physical blow to my ribs. It belonged to Vanessa. Vanessa had been my closest confidant since our first semester at design school. She was the woman who adjusted my veil before I walked down the aisle. She was the person who sat on the linoleum floor of a hospital waiting room with me, holding a cold plastic cup of water while I wept over my 2nd consecutive pregnancy loss. "I just don't want our son growing up confused about who his real family is," Vanessa said. Her tone was playful, intimate, completely comfortable in the space she had carved out inside my life. My fingers clamped onto the steering wheel until my knuckles turned stark white. I did not breathe. I did not make a sound. The rain kept hammering against the glass. The traffic on the overpass remained entirely stagnant, and inside my chest, something shattered into thousands of tiny, transparent shards. I sat perfectly still in the dim cabin of my car, and I listened to my husband outline the remaining parameters of his life. Logan chuckled, that low, self-satisfied sound he made when he believed he was the most intelligent man in the room. "Don't worry," he told her. "Chloe is unbelievably naive. The moment the $4 million trust distribution from her father's estate administration clears into our joint wealth account next month, I'll initiate the offshore wire routing. By the time she notices the discrepancy, the divorce paperwork will be on her desk and we'll be out of the country. She'll be left with absolutely nothing." Vanessa let out another soft laugh, a sound of genuine delight. Then Logan added one final remark. It was delivered casually, like a throwaway comment about the weather. "Besides," he said, "she's already proven her body doesn't work the way a woman's should. The miscarriages saved me the trouble of finding an excuse to leave later anyway." He was joking about the losses. He was using the deepest trauma of my adult life as a punchline to amuse the woman I called my sister. The recording on my dashboard kept running. It captured 5 minutes and 14 seconds of continuous audio before the connection finally dropped. I know that exact duration because I have kept the file secure on 3 separate encrypted drives. I don't listen to it out of pain anymore. I listen to it because cold, undeniable data is the ultimate cure for lingering affection. When the screen finally went dark, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat in the gridlock traffic and breathed with absolute precision. I needed to think before I felt. I needed to become a strategist before the rain cleared. I shifted my car into gear, exited at the next ramp, and drove directly to the corporate headquarters of Vance Development. My father, Arthur Vance, has spent 45 years managing commercial acquisitions. He is a man built out of silence and calculated reactions. He has a simple, unyielding rule for business and life. Build your walls thick, trust verified data, and never let a predator sleep under your roof. He had never approved of Logan. When we were engaged, he looked at Logan's polished charm and told me, "He looks like an actor who memorized the lines of a gentleman, Chloe. Make sure you see him when the cameras are off." At 21, I thought my father was simply being cynical. At 27, I realized he was simply accurate. I walked into his private office at 7:15 p.m. without an alert. His executive assistant, who had been with the firm for 2 decades, took one look at my face and opened the heavy mahogany doors without asking a single question. My father looked up from his desk. His eyes scanned me with the rapid automated focus of a lens adjusting to low light. I didn't say a word. I walked over, placed my phone face up on the blotter, and pressed the play icon. We sat in total silence for 5 minutes and 14 seconds. My father listened with his eyelids lowered, completely removing visual distraction, so he could process the acoustic evidence. His expression remained entirely blank, except for a slight hardening at the edge of his jawline around the 3-minute mark. When the recording ended, the room was dead quiet. My father opened his eyes. They were cold, clear, and fixed on me. He said, "Do you want an apology, or do you want a liquidation?" I looked back at him, my voice completely steady. "I want them erased from my ledger." A faint, grim smile touched his lips. "Good." He reached for his secure office landline and placed 2 calls. The first was to Marcus Vance Cole, our family's chief asset protection counsel. The second was to a specialized private intelligence operative who handled background verification for international corporate mergers. My father gave them the exact same directive. 3 weeks. Full forensic deployment, no leaks. Then he looked across the desk at me. "Does Vanessa know the exact structure of the trust?" "Logan knows," I replied, "which means she knows." "The transfer was scheduled for the 15th of next month," my father stated calmly. "We will let the automated ledger notifications run their standard cycle. The account will appear active on Logan's tracking apps. Let him watch the digital numbers. It will keep him complacent while we pull the floor out from under his feet." He paused, studying my face. "Can you go back to that house and act as though your world is perfectly intact?" "I've spent 6 years building a life with a ghost," I said. "I can spend 3 weeks pretending he's real." I went back to our penthouse. I prepared dinner. When Logan returned home, smelling of expensive cologne and complaining about his grueling afternoon, I smiled, poured him a glass of water, and asked about his new clients. I watched him deploy his charm, the precise head tilt, the warm eye contact, the practiced cadence of an attentive husband. I realized then that his affection was just a setting on a machine. He turned it on when he wanted me compliant. For the next 21 days, I lived a double life. Every morning I woke up, kissed his cheek, and went to work. Every evening I sat across from him at dinner and spoke in soft, supportive tones. But every afternoon I met with my father's legal and investigative teams in a plain, unmarked conference room downtown. By the second week, the surveillance files were immense. The intelligence team presented 3 thick binders on the glass table. They had been tracking Logan and Vanessa's movements with clinical precision. They had photographic logs of 16 distinct meetings at an upscale boutique hotel on the north side of the city. There were high-resolution images of them sitting at a secluded patio table. Logan's hand resting casually on her knee. Both of them laughing with the absolute ease of thieves who believed the vault security was entirely turned off. But the financial forensic report was where the trap truly closed. The investigator turned to the banking layout. Logan had been quietly establishing a network of secondary corporate accounts under a shell entity named Apex Consulting. Over the last 9 months, he had been executing small automated transfers from our shared household expense account. Each transfer was deliberately kept under the standard corporate audit threshold to avoid triggering an alert on my phone. He's been running dry trials, the investigator explained, pointing at the ledger graphs. He's testing the automated verification speeds of the offshore banks. He's already funneled $380,000 out of your personal asset reserves. That money was my own capital, derived from an architectural design award and an early inheritance from my mother's estate. He had been skimming it systematically, dollar by dollar, while telling me we needed to cut back on our vacation budget to prepare for our future family. We leave the balance exactly where it is, Marcus, the attorney advised. If we freeze the accounts now, he'll panic and attempt to liquidate other shared assets. Let him think the pipeline is clear. On the morning of the 15th, the $4 million trust transfer will be legally routed into a single signatory protected entity that requires your biometric verification alone. His app will show a balance update, but his access credentials will be completely severed. During the third week, the intelligence team dropped a final unexpected document onto the table. It was a medical timeline analysis. The operative had cross-referenced Vanessa's prenatal medical filings with Logan's confirmed corporate travel logs. There is a structural anomaly in the timeline, the investigator stated in a flat professional tone. The conception window matches a 2-week period when Logan was managing an audit on-site in New York. However, the travel logs and cellular tower pings indicate that during that exact same window, Vanessa was residing at a coastal resort with an executive vice president from her own firm, a man named Julian Vance. I looked at the data sheets. I looked at the hotel check-in times and the shared flight itineraries. A cold, terrible sense of irony washed over me. Logan had compromised his career, his marriage, and his integrity to build an escape hatch for a child that wasn't even his. He didn't know. Vanessa didn't know that the investigator had uncovered the overlap either. They were both completely blind, sprinting toward a cliff while holding hands. I closed the folder. The dinner party is this Friday, I told the room. Let's make sure the seating arrangements are perfect. I organized the dinner under the pretense of celebrating the finalization of the family trust distribution. I told Logan I wanted it to be private, intimate, just the three of us in our dining room, marking the beginning of our financial independence. He was ecstatic. He even insisted on purchasing an incredibly expensive vintage wine to mark the occasion. I cooked the entire meal myself. I set the table with our wedding china. In the center of the table, I placed a vase filled with dark, structured calla lilies, Vanessa's favorite flower. Throughout the first 2 courses, the air in the room was dense with unspoken triumph. Logan checked his financial tracking application 4 times before the main course was served. I watched his eyes dip toward the screen under the table, his face reflecting the faint blue light. Before he looked back up with that rehearsed, radiant smile, he was performing the role of a supportive partner while his mind was already offshore, counting money that didn't exist. Vanessa sat to his right, wearing a loose, elegant silk dress. She was warm, engaging, asking deep questions about my latest architectural project, playing the part of the fiercely loyal best friend she had practiced for years. I watched the subtle choreography of their movements, the slight, disciplined avoidance of prolonged eye contact, the careful way they calibrated their laughter so it didn't seem too shared. They were so incredibly proud of themselves. They sat in my home, eating my food, looking at me across the linen tablecloth, and completely agreed that I was a soft, defenseless target. After the dessert plates were cleared, I stood up calmly. I walked over to the kitchen island, picked up a thick, sealed white document folio, and walked back to the head of the table. I placed it directly in front of my husband. The trust distribution cleared the internal audit today, I said, my voice smooth and perfectly modulated. I wanted you to see the final execution sheets first. Logan reached for the folder with an eagerness he couldn't completely conceal. His fingers practically tore through the adhesive seal, his eyes immediately scanning for the 7-figure balance summary. Then his movement stopped. The first section didn't contain bank codes. It contained high-resolution surveillance photographs, 16 distinct dates, chronologically arranged, showing the hotel lobby, the corner table, his car idling outside her apartment building, and his hand resting on her knee. The second section contained the forensic accounting ledger. Every single micro-transfer from our shared household account to Apex Consulting, complete with routing numbers and his digital signature on the authorization lines. And the third section was the transcript, 5 minutes and 14 seconds, formatted perfectly like an architectural brief. Asterisk Logan, Vanessa, Logan. Asterisk. Every single syllable of the pocket dial was laid out in clean 12-point font on the stark white paper. The jokes about my body, the remarks about my anxiety, the plan to leave me with nothing. It was all sitting there under the bright dining room chandelier. The color didn't just leave Logan's face, it seemed to drain from his entire posture. He looked like an empty suit collapsing in a chair. Vanessa had gone completely rigid, her eyes darting across the printed pages with the frantic speed of a computer trying to reboot after a total system failure. I sat back down at the head of the table and folded my hands neatly. The $4 million was never transferred into the joint account, I said softly. My father altered the routing parameters 3 weeks ago. The funds are secure in an independent entity. Furthermore, this penthouse is registered to Vance Development. Your name was removed from the corporate lease renewal yesterday morning. Logan opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His polished eloquence had completely run out of fuel. You have exactly 10 minutes to remove your personal electronics and your briefcase from this property, I continued, looking directly into his eyes. The remaining items will be delivered to a commercial storage facility outside the city limits tomorrow morning. Chloe, listen to me, Logan stammered, his voice cracking as he reached for the pages. This is an interpretation. This isn't what it looks like. There is one more page, I interrupted, gesturing toward the back of the folio. Vanessa's trembling fingers turned to the final sheet. It was the medical timeline analysis, the London overlap, the hotel check-in data, and the flight registries linking her to Julian Vance. The silence that followed was absolute. Logan looked at the sheet. Then he looked slowly at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at the dates, her jaw dropping slightly as the realization hit her that her own secret had been laid bare in front of the man she was betraying me for. The look of supreme intelligence vanished from both of their faces. In a single second, the entire future they had built on a foundation of lies dissolved into nothing. You sacrificed your marriage, your career, and your reputation, I said, taking a slow, measured sip of my water. And you did it for a future that was never even real. They left. The exit wasn't loud. It didn't involve screaming or broken glass, because there was nothing left to fight for. The evidence was absolute. The legal filings were already stamped, and the locks on the outer doors were scheduled for digital recoding at midnight. Vanessa picked up her wrap without saying a single word, her face completely hollowed out by the realization of her own exposure. She left first. Logan followed 4 minutes later, carrying nothing but his briefcase and the heavy weight of a multi-million-dollar fraud lawsuit that would dismantle his consulting practice by the end of the quarter. It has been several months since that evening. The legal proceedings moved with the rapid, unyielding momentum that only my father's legal firm can command. The $380,000 Logan skimmed was fully recovered under court-ordered asset preservation mandates. His professional consulting license is currently under review by the State Board due to the public nature of the financial misconduct filings. I still live in the penthouse. I changed the interior layout, replacing the heavy, dark furniture with clean lines and open spaces that catch the morning sun. Last week, my father came over for dinner. He brought a bottle of the good wine. We sat at the table, discussing the blueprints for a new civic gallery I am designing downtown. Near the end of the evening, he looked across the table at me and said, "You handled the structure well, Chloe." I smiled, looking out at the city lights reflecting against the clean glass windows. I had a very good teacher, I said. I learned to watch the hands, not the faces.